From now on, we're going to take care of the house ourselves, so you need to find somewhere else to live," my brother and his wife said bluntly. My mother agreed with them, as if I was just a burden. Did they forget who has been paying the household bills? I never thought they'd be so disrespectful. In that moment, I silently resolved to take certain steps. My name is Carrie. I'm 30 years old and currently living with my parents again. After graduating from college, I had a tough time making it on my own. The real world was far harsher than I expected, and eventually, I felt too drained to keep going. So, I returned home. At first, I lived off unemployment benefits while job hunting. Then I discovered remote work opportunities and began freelancing. With a background in science and engineering, I put my skills to use as a freelance engineer. I started small, with modest paying projects, but the freedom to work from home was liberating. Unlike traditional office jobs, I didn't have to deal with people much, and I slowly regained my confidence. Over time, I earned larger projects and built a steady income. After about a year, I was making as much as a full-time employee. The problem, though, was that my parents, especially my mother, didn't understand my work. My father, after I explained things in detail, came around, but my mother was more old-fashioned. No matter how much I tried to explain that freelancing was a real job, she'd say things like, "How long do you plan to stay at home? It's been over 2 years now. Maybe it's time you looked for something outside." Despite my attempts to explain, she saw it as just something online and was skeptical. No amount of explanation seemed to help. I even showed her emails from clients and pay statements, but she still couldn't accept my way of life. "Isn't that some shady business you're involved in?" she'd say. "Of course not. I'm paid regularly. It's a legitimate job," I'd reply, but she was relentless. "How do I know you're not just living off unemployment benefits? You can't get those forever." I thought about moving out, but I hadn't saved enough yet. Around that time, my father's health started to decline. His legs and back were worsening, and he needed care. He'd retired early, and now his income was limited to his pension. "Dad, are you okay?" I asked one evening, noticing how tired he looked. "I'm all right, Carrie, don't worry about me. I've got my pension. I'll manage," he said. "But with the way Mom spends, are you sure that's enough?" He gave a weary smile. "We'll just have to make do with our savings." Seeing the stress on his face, I felt a deep sense of responsibility. My father had always supported me, through college and when I moved back home after my struggles. Could I really just leave him now to fend for himself? My mother, too, seemed lost about my father's sudden decline. I realized I couldn't just leave them. I wanted to help. "Don't worry, Dad, I'll take care of things from now on." "Really?" He looked surprised. "But do you even make enough?" "Trust me, Dad, my income is steady." I showed him my bank statements. He had always understood my work more than Mom did, so I knew he'd believe me. "Carrie, I had no idea you were doing so well," he said, clearly impressed. "Yeah, things have picked up recently," I said, relieved to have his approval. "Then, can you help us out a bit?" he asked cautiously. "Of course, you've done so much for me. It's my turn to support the family." "Thank you, Carrie." From then on, I took on most of the household expenses, including my father's medical bills. I set up a monthly transfer to help cover their living costs. Since my mother had been using my father's credit card for years, I arranged for a new one and gave her a supplementary card. My father and I tried to save wherever we could, and I encouraged my mother to do the same. But now, with my brother and his wife wanting me out, things are about to change. I'm not sure what's coming next, but I know I'll be ready. My mother sighed heavily. "So what now? Should we just kick Carrie out of the house? She's been contributing financially. You know, things would get a lot harder without her." "Is that true?" She didn't sound fully convinced, still doubtful of my contributions. My father stepped in, explaining again, and after a lot of back and forth, she reluctantly agreed to let me stay. I continued working and helping out at home, though things were far from peaceful. My mother soon began taking my help for granted, becoming increasingly demanding. "Can't you finish your chores any faster?" "Sorry, I'm doing my best, but it's hard to juggle everything while working." "You always say that, but is it really that difficult?" she snapped. No matter how much I tried to explain, she wouldn't listen or try to understand. I began to realize that our relationship was becoming strained beyond repair. At least my father appreciated what I was doing. and his support kept me going. We lived this way for about a year, managing in our own uneasy balance. Then, one day, my father suddenly fell ill and was hospitalized. I visited him daily, and these moments with him brought some comfort during an otherwise difficult time. "Hey, Dad, how are you feeling today?" "Thank you, Carrie," he said, his voice weak. "It doesn't seem like I'm getting better anytime soon, but I hope I'm not too much of a burden." "Don't say that, taking care of you is never a burden to me." He smiled softly, though concern still clouded his face. "But I know you and your mother haven't been getting along." "Well, that's a little true," I admitted, trying to stay positive. After my father's hospitalization, things between my mother and me only got worse. Living with her felt suffocating, but I couldn't bring myself to leave while my father needed me. Despite everything, I remembered the care my mother once showed me, how she used to make my lunch every day and prepare thoughtful dinners. I clung to those memories, but everything changed after a single, unexpected event. One evening, my mother greeted my brother Kevin with, "I've been waiting for you, you're late." "Sorry, Mom, things were hectic," Kevin replied, brushing off her irritation. "Hi, mother-in-law," his wife Mary chimed in, walking through the door behind him. "Hello, Mary, thank you for coming," my mother responded warmly. I watched, stunned and silent. I hadn't expected them. Then Kevin turned to me, his expression cold. "Carrie, we're moving in. We'll be living here from now on." "What? Why?" I stammered. "Mom was worried about you living here alone with Dad in the hospital. She thinks it's too much for you to handle." I glanced at my mother, but she avoided my gaze. Kevin continued, "We thought this would help ease her worries. Don't worry, Carrie, we'll support you," his wife added with a sly smile that made me uneasy, as if there was something more beneath her words. "Thank you both," my mother said, her voice taking on a strange new edge. "Carrie, you'll need to step up around here a bit more, otherwise, it's going to be hard for you to stay." Here we go again, I thought, frustration building. While it was a surprise that my brother and his wife were moving in, Kevin had a good job and earned well, but I was also pulling my weight, contributing financially and working hard. Could they manage without me? Life at home changed drastically once Kevin and Mary moved in, and it wasn't long before things became more difficult than I had imagined. "Carrie, are you still in bed? Get up and make breakfast," Mary banged on my door one morning. "I'm up, I'm working," I called back, already deep into my tasks. Mornings were my most productive time, and I always got an early start. But Mary didn't care, and as the days went on, it became clear that this new arrangement was about to push me to my limits. I had hoped to spend that quiet morning in peace, without interruptions. "Really?" my sister-in-law snapped. "Then why don't you get on with it and make breakfast already?" "Do I have to do it all by myself?" I asked, frustrated. Our family usually had a casual routine in the mornings. Everyone just grabbed what they wanted. My mother and sister-in-law were both home, and I figured it was reasonable for Mary to make breakfast for her husband, my brother. But she had other ideas. "We're living together now, so we all need to pitch in," she said with a smirk. Reluctantly, I helped them prepare breakfast, though it didn't take long before they started complaining. "Is this it? This is breakfast? It's not enough," my brother said. I had made soft scrambled eggs, a fresh lettuce salad, buttered toast, and sausages. I thought it was pretty decent, but apparently, it wasn't up to their standards. "Then don't eat it," I shot back, unable to hide my irritation. They looked at me, startled by my tone. "What's with that attitude? Who do you think you are?" My brother spat. "You should be helping more with the housework." "But I'm working too," I replied, trying to stay calm. "Oh, work? Really? What kind of work is that? Are you crazy?" My brother and Mary glared at me, doubting every word. Kevin had always looked down on me, likely influenced by our mother, and now Mary joined in. This constant belittling was eating into my work time. Without another word, I packed up my laptop, shoved it in my bag, and headed for the door. "Wait, where are you going?" my brother called after me, but I ignored him and made my way to the hospital to see my father. When I arrived, my father looked up in surprise. "Carrie, what's wrong? You look upset." I sat down and explained everything that had just happened at home. He listened quietly, concern etched on his face. "I didn't realize things had gotten that bad." "I'm so sorry, Carrie," he said softly, "but don't let them get to you. You're free to live your life the way you want. I felt a wave of relief. I don't know what to do, Dad. I feel so lost. Your mother will feel more at ease with Kevin at home. You shouldn't have to stay somewhere that makes you unhappy. All I want is for you to be happy. Carrie, do what's best for you. Thank you, Dad, I said, tears welling up in my eyes. His words gave me the courage I needed. That evening, I returned home, determined to make a decision. As I walked in, the atmosphere felt tense. My mother, brother, and sister-in-law sat together with serious expressions. Where were you? Kevin demanded. I had to take the day off because of you. I was taken aback. You took a day off work, why? He scoffed. Because you're causing too much trouble. It's irresponsible to just disappear like that. His words surprised me. Was it really so easy for him to skip work? Meanwhile, he and Mary's voices grew louder and more accusatory. Finally, he said, "Get out." What? I blinked in shock. From now on, the three of us are living here together. We don't need you. If you can't get along, then leave. We don't need an overbearing presence like you around. My mother, echoing his sentiment, added, "Carrie, you don't need to stay here anymore. We can handle things without you." It was as if they had all conspired against me. Did they not understand that I had been contributing to the family's finances? My mother, who bought designer goods every month, had no idea how dependent she was on me. What would she do when her allowance disappeared? I was livid. No matter how many times I tried to explain, they ignored me. They were being too cruel, too rude, and I had had enough. I decided to take matters into my own hands. First, I transferred the funds from the joint account linked to my mother's credit card into a separate account that I controlled. I wanted to see how she'd react when her card suddenly stopped working. Then, I moved some of the money from the family account, money that I had been using to cover household expenses, leaving only what was necessary for my father's medical bills. My mother had no idea this account existed, and I knew that the burden would now fall on Kevin and his wife. I wasn't sure about my brother's financial situation, but I had a feeling he would feel the strain soon enough. After sorting out the finances, I packed up my things. I walked into the living room and said firmly, "I'm leaving." My mother, brother, and sister-in-law were stunned. They hadn't expected me to actually go through with it, but as I watched their faces, I saw something else: satisfaction. "You're finally leaving," Kevin sneered. "Good riddance, don't even think about coming back." I couldn't believe it. After everything I had done for them, they were still treating me like an outsider. But now, I was free from their constant demands and belittling comments. I would find my own way forward, without them. "Of course not, don't contact me again." They smiled as I walked out the door, but I wondered how long that would last after I was gone. Internally, I smiled too, because I was free. I had started a new life, one filled with peace and the luxury of time to focus on my work. The change was refreshing, and I felt completely rejuvenated. Then one day, just as I had expected, my phone rang. It was my brother. "I told you not to contact me. What do you want?" I asked, already knowing where this conversation was heading. "Carrie, is it true you handled all the family finances?" His voice was filled with a mix of surprise and panic. "Yes, that's right. Why are you asking now?" I responded calmly. "We had no idea. Why didn't you tell us?" he demanded. "I tried. I told you I was working, but neither you nor Mom believed me," I said. "Well, Mom said a lot, and I got a bit confused," he stammered. "So, that's not really my fault, is it?" I shot back. "No, but we're in trouble. Mom's been spending a lot, and we can't pay the bills anymore. The utilities, the groceries, it's piling up," he admitted, sounding desperate. "Yes, that's because I was managing everything. Now that I'm gone, it's up to you. Carrie, please, I need you to transfer some money into my account." "What?" I asked, stunned by the audacity. "I'm begging you, we're out of savings. Can you send some money?" "You're kidding, right? You work for a big company, isn't that enough?" There was a pause. "Actually, I got fired," he confessed. "What? When?" "A while ago, before I moved back in with Mom and Dad." I was speechless. So he had known all along that he didn't have a job, and he moved back expecting that our parents' finances could support him. He must have thought there was enough money from our father's pension. not realizing that I had been the one keeping everything afloat. Then my brother's wife chimed in. Carrie, we really need your help. We're running out of savings. My mother, too, added. Your father's furious. He's refusing to contribute any more money. We're in a terrible situation. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. You know, I've done more than enough for all of you. You're healthy and capable. It's time for you to support yourselves. I'll be cheering you on from afar. The panic in their voices was unmistakable. Carrie, wait, my brother pleaded, but I had made up my mind. Take some time to reflect on how you've treated me. Goodbye, I said, hanging up the phone. I distanced myself from them after that. Even my father had grown tired of the situation and consulted a lawyer. He decided to move to a different hospital and live quietly elsewhere, and I was grateful that I could visit him daily. Later, a friend told me about my brother's situation. He had moved into a small apartment and was living frugally. My mother, who hadn't worked in years, was struggling with her new job. My brother had a hard time adjusting too. His overconfidence as a college graduate made it difficult for him to take advice from younger coworkers, and his part-time jobs didn't last long. His wife, the only one holding things together financially, eventually couldn't handle the pressure and left. Now it was just my brother and mother, trying to make ends meet. But my mother's overspending habits hadn't changed, and her debts were growing. I worried about her sometimes, but I knew I couldn't help anymore. I was finally in a comfortable living space, earning more money, and even considering new opportunities. Most importantly, I could visit my father every day and enjoy seeing his cheerful smile. I was finally free to live my life on my terms.